Turn it off.
nervous
On.
about it.
Okay.
But they're,
On your left. And have this on a clipboard on your left.
Make sure you turn it on because
So,
switched it on.
oh, there. You think that will work? Okay, and then you can, yeah, I know, I just. For now, yeah, I've got the clipboard, so to do that, but the way your presentation is at the end, and so when I get through with my stuff and you get ready for yours, I'll give that, hand that off to you. No problem. Yes, we have a solution, but it also raises some questions.
Get my act together here. Paula, are you ready? Okay. What, the Arts Festival? The Arts Festival starts on the, I want to say, yeah, I think it is the 19th. Are we good? Okay.
Got your green on, look at you.
Of course.
This is green.
It doesn't look green.
It's even a green plaid. You gotta really look hard. Seriously.
Well, you've got something in your pocket there that might have some green on it.
100%.
We'll look closer later. After the meeting, we'll take the light to it.
Exactly.
Okay. You guys ready?
We are. We're chomping at the bit.
Ready? Okay. Welcome and happy St. Patrick's Day today. Welcome to the Downtown Design Review Committee, March 17th, 2016 meeting. And first item is turn off your cell phones. This is always a reminder for myself. And we have roll call.
Betsy Brunstetter,
Present.
Gigi Faulkner,
Present.
Charles Ainsworth,
Present.
Corey Bates, Connie Scothorn, Richard Tannenbaum, Danielle Terrio. You have a quorum.
Okay. For another item, another welcome is to our new member, Danielle Terrio. Danielle is you want to tell us a little bit about yourself just real quick? Sure. Do you have your mic on?
Okay, is that working? Okay. Sure, I'm an architect here in Oklahoma City.
smile up at Steve.
Apparently, yeah, I've heard that there's a camera, so. And I work for a firm downtown called Beck Design, and I'm very excited to serve on the committee, and I can't wait to contribute to the downtown development.
We are excited to have you here.
Thank you, Betsy.
Welcome. Okay, so approval of minutes. Okay. Here we go. That was a Tannenbaum Ainsworth motion and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, moving right along. Cases withdrawn. We do not need to vote on that. I just informational. Continuance request. Is there anyone that needs to talk about these, or any questions about this being a continuance?
Yeah, on item 4A, 100 South E.K. Gaylord, that's related to the case withdrawn. There were a couple of, there's been some redesigns. Some items went away and some items are being changed. So the change will be resubmitted for the April meeting. So we ask that 4A be continued to April, and 4B needs a little bit more time, so we ask that it be continued to May.
So let's vote on those separately.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion on item A? Until, they need till April.
Until the April meeting?
Okay, that was Connie and Gigi. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, then item B. Do we have a motion?
Move to continue to the May meeting.
Okay, Connie and Gigi once again. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. As far as I can see, there is nothing on the consent docket. We'll move right into cases for individual consideration. I think Connie mentioned that she has to abstain from this vote. Fortunately, we have plenty of people due to our new appointment. Thank you very much. I think we are full. Okay. Item 6A, is the applicant present? Okay, who will be speaking for you?
They've indicated that any of them are available in case you have questions, but I probably would ask the,
Okay, you want to
come on, just.
Laura, you want to?
A couple of years ago, you all approved, a CA was approved for the rehab of an existing structure into doggy daycare. That's not the wording you used at the time, but that's the terminology we use today. At the end of the construction process, staff was contacted because some minor tweaking had occurred during construction. Unfortunately, one of those was, instead of repairing the stucco, which had been approved, there were issues that they felt couldn't be addressed that way, and they would end up with significant cracking repeatedly. And so it was determined by their design professionals that they needed to just cover the entire building with EIFS. And at that point, as we stated in the staff report, the work has already been done, but we're here to discuss it as though it hasn't been, because we do need to vote on it. I went out and took pictures. What I will say is that based on the pictures before they started the construction, the building looks really, really great now if you haven't been by there. It's across from the Metropolitan. There's some things happening in the area, which is exciting. The only area that's not concrete up next to the building, as you see in the lower right-hand corner, is a planter area that's on the front facade, the street facade, that is going to be maintained by hand. So there won't be landscaping equipment up next to the building that could damage it. So I've included pictures showing all of the facades, showing that they do have concrete up next to it. The one there on the lower left, you can see that's next to the parking. They have parking stops so the vehicles won't hit it. And then I did a close-up showing the texture that they used, which looks, I'm not an architect, but to me it looked remarkably similar to what it probably looked like when it was the stucco. The area surrounding it is kind of a hodgepodge of different things. As I mentioned, the Metropolitan's across the street, and then there's some industrial-type warehousing buildings near there. Java Joe's is just down the street, and the railroad tracks. I've included the section in the code that talks about why we're here before you today. And as I stated earlier, I don't believe that there is much of a difference in the appearance of the building. He has clearly addressed the concern that we've had previously on cases about damage from landscaping equipment, and staff recommends approval of this request.
Okay. I guess my concern about approving this project is the precedent that it sets, and it directly is in conflict with some of our guidelines. So if we should decide that this is appropriate, I think we need to craft our motion very, very carefully to allow it. So that's my comment.
Excuse me, were all 4 facades previously stucco?
Yes.
Yes, it was.
Okay. And all that we're discussing today is the EFS installation?
Correct. All of the other items that came up were addressed administratively, just very minor things during the construction process. But this one obviously had to come to you.
Okay. As much as I have an understanding of using EFS within the guidelines, looking at the building itself, I do think it actually is a good EFS installation. It's clean. The texture is consistent.
I do have another question. Was Panzer mesh, or the high-impact mesh, used at the lower 4 feet at least of the building?
I would have to check. I don't remember off the top of my head.
There's an option for
Panzer
not-
mesh,
yeah.
the high impact mesh. I don't know. I know we used the mesh backing for it. I don't remember if it was Panzer mesh or which one.
Okay.
I can check the specifications if that would.
This has been done, right?
It's complete.
Right. As I mentioned, if we approve this, I would highly recommend that we craft the motion appropriately. So if anybody wants to take a whack at that.
I move to approve this one and only treatment of EFS on this one and only building in
Is there
the
a reason?
downtown design district.
You want to add any reasons why it's appropriate? Corey
Because
mentioned.
it's out of our normal guidelines, and I think this gentleman is asking for forgiveness and not permission, even though he's gone through the administrative process. Is that too much?
Well, I think Corey might have something to help you with.
All right, go ahead.
Well, in addition to that, the combination of the quality of the installation with the protective measures taken to protect the EFS only in this case allow, or only in this case are reasoning to move to approve this.
Okay. Is that,
Yeah.
Paula, how's that for a motion? Complicated enough? Okay. Tannenbaum and Ainsworth, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you. Next item. Item 6B. And I know we need to vote on these all separately, right?
Yes, we do. We
Do you want us to
discussion could
present
be
them all
similar.
together?
I think presenting them all together is really appropriate because all of a sudden we've got a bigger impact to this area.
Okay.
Laura, do you want to go through this first?
Sure.
Sam is just an amazing.
So I'm really glad I did the one map that you've got because it has them all on there.
Yeah,
Great
me
map.
too.
So I have individual PowerPoints for all of these if they're, and I can pull all of them up. We could go through one if they're, but I'm thinking you'll get the idea if we look at the first one. So we have applications in for demolition in an area that the Phase 4 of the Intensive Level Historic Survey indicated as a potential residential historic district, the Orndale District. Over the last year since I've been here, we've had at least a couple that have come in that area. You have structures in that area, some are 100 years old. Some are very small, 500-600 square feet. And for the most part, when you drive through the neighborhood, you will see there has not been consistent maintenance of the structures. As you can tell by this structure here, a lot of them are vacant, a lot of them are boarded up. There continues to be a problem with them getting broken into. At least 2 of these that you're considering have been set on fire by people that have trespassed into the structures. And so it's causing issues. When I was out taking pictures, I actually had one of the neighbors was so excited that some of these were going to be torn down. He was out talking to me, and he lives there. And he was just excited to see some more of these come down. As you can see on this particular block, there is one house in the area, the one up on the upper left, that big two-story, and that's the only one that's like that in the neighborhood, and that one is under the process of being renovated. But that is atypical for this neighborhood. Most of them are like the ones you see on the screen there, boarded up. On the map that I included in your packet, which let me scroll to, I decided that we needed to look at what's been happening out there since 2012. So every place you see a red X, that's something that's been approved to be torn down by either this committee, by staff, because it went to city council and it was determined to be dilapidated, because as you know, they don't have to go through our process if that happens. So some of these have been torn down by the city. So we've had several in this area that have been demolished over time, which reduces the number of contributing structures that you actually need to make the district. This isn't a district like you normally think of as a historic district. Like, we've got a lot of them here, but most of those further north have unique architecture, interesting structures made out of stone or whatever. But there is a history to this area, and it's who lived there. It's the workers that moved in. However, the structures are in such bad condition, it would be extremely expensive and not necessarily beneficial to fix them because they're small. They're not necessarily what people are looking for as far as what's the current market, what's the future market, is this what people are looking for in a house. In addition to looking at studies that have come out in the last few years, you've got the Coeur d'Alene study, you've got the Downtown Design Framework, which is calling for much higher density, residential mixed use, that kind of thing, and that's not what we have out in this neighborhood. So you find in all these 7 staff reports, staff was supportive of the demolition. There are no plans at the present time by this property owner, who unfortunately I talked to her on the phone, she's sick, and so that's why she's not here, but she has a good spokesperson for her. Sam is here to represent. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer them.
One of the things that I learned when going over this was that the map shows I-40. That's not I-40. That's going to be the boulevard. So
correct, because that's an old. I probably should have crossed that one
right.
out.
That goes hand in hand with the idea that this area would want to be more dense and provide more high-density housing and services along the boulevard. So,
plus, there's also some industrial uses, industrial buildings adjacent to the residential that you could see in some of the pictures. and which also impact, can we actually attract people to live in this type of housing unit in this area?
So there's no one living there now.
None of these houses are
No.
occupied.
There's no, they're in terrible shape. There's no historic.
I'll speak cautiously on that one. There is a significance to this area.
But they
The
haven't been-
development of this area as an older subdivision, there is a value to this area. But it's not what normal people think of as historic.
It's not on the National Register.
that was my point.
It was, in the intensive level survey, it was identified as a potentially eligible district. No movement on that has ever gone forward. So the evaluation of its historic nature is up to the committee.
And the developer owner are going to pay for the demolition.
Yes,
And there is no plan at this time
correct.
for does the owner own other parcels adjoining or adjacent?
Yes, she does.
So it does become one developable parcel
Potentially.
for whatever, multifamily or commercial or whatever. Okay.
So, number 48 on this survey is in between.
Hang on just a second, and I can pull that one up. What did I just do, Paula? Oh, no.
It's on your
No.
map, Laura.
Yeah, I was going to pull up that particular. That, yes. Okay, thanks. Let's see, for that was
48.
23. Okay. I just wanted to,
Yeah.
yes, this house right here.
So that's in between some of the other
Yes, it
still
is.
standing houses. Looks like people live there.
Yes, on the upper left, that is to the west of that one. That's the beer bus. Apparently, that's well-known around here. I didn't know that. There are people that live in, that's what it says, people live in those. The lower right, those are the houses to the right. I know the one with the fence in front of it has someone living there because the dog came out to greet me, but I'm not sure about the lower right one. There are people that live in the neighborhood. I'm not saying all of the houses are vacant.
Right.
In this particular case, that's the one that's in the middle of those houses.
Excuse me. As soon as she bought these houses, she said those, Sam Gresham, architect, she purchased these houses and she said they were immediately broken into and stripped. Every one of them. She says none of them have been left untouched.
So does she own the houses on either side of
I don't believe she owns those at this time.
okay, so she's kind of accumulating property.
Yes.
And how long has she owned these?
How, pardon me?
How long has she owned these?
Not long, not long. I think within a year or so. It's been-
Because I noticed that in all the reports that were done, I think I got it in 2012, that the houses were occupied and looked in pretty good condition. So
It's changed considerably.
she bought them as empty places, or did she buy them?
Well, some of them had occupants. She told me of one, and that's the only one I know about. I don't know these so completely that I could tell you about each one, but she did describe that she had some tenants or someone living in one who had just moved out, and that was the description she gave me. Them moving out, and immediately she said the house was stripped. Someone went in, broke in, took everything of value, copper, wires, everything. So I'm not sure if that's typical of all of them, but she feels that their condition is pretty poor. I looked on Craigslist to see if anyone was looking for houses. I thought it might be kind of nice to have it moved, and I found a guy. He said he was going to go look at them. He called me back. He said, these are not possible. I mean, he can't make any value, get any value out of these properties to move them. So I did make the effort. He said he'd consider it. I don't know of any of them that if you said, well, that's a historic building and the historic fabric is really, I was looking at the one on the screen just then, but Historic fabric is really not even in evidence there. A metal front door with aluminum windows. Even in that photograph, the original survey photograph, I presume those porch posts are not original. The concrete porch is not original. The front doors, front windows, everything about that house is historic fabric. Looks a little bit corrupted, if there is any left at all. So,
I included the survey pictures from 2012, and they're in your packet. And it was, in my opinion, and looking at some of those, even though they called them good, when I look at what the definition in the survey, what good is, to me, none of them met that. I'm sure they've been rentals for a long time. We as renters get a really bad rap, but a lot of people misuse the houses, and they really can go down fast. It was my understanding when she bought all of these that they were in pretty poor shape when she bought them. And she was aware of Core to Shore. She wasn't aware of Downtown Design Framework until she came to meet with me, and I said, here, don't forget, we have this new report you need to be aware of. This one you brought up had houses around it. There's one other one that had, let's see, which one was that? That was 18. That's to the south of 18. We have these three houses, and the upper two, there are people living in them. So it's hit and miss, whether you've got somebody living next to you or you've got an abandoned, boarded up next to you and across the street. So it's a very eye-opening experience to drive through that neighborhood.
While you're contemplating that, I just want to tell you that I met with this lady a few months ago. She was looking for investors. So my question is, should I recuse myself? I am not an investor, by the way.
I've driven the area and familiar with everything that's happening as well, but I'm not going to recuse myself because we're not involved.
That's
So
right.
that's up to you.
Well, I mean, I can tell you what her intent is. Like we do that. I mean, she's
Sure.
trying to block these properties up as a bigger development, and I think this area demands that. I see no value in trying to save these houses. I mean, it's hit and miss. Eventually, somebody's going to block this area up, and I think it's going to contribute to what I think our overall goal is
Right.
to have higher density and so on and so forth. So I applaud this effort, and I think it's moved. I think we should consider approving.
Okay.
Well, and looking at the condition of these houses and the scale of each and the area that they're in, they would need a lot of TLC to get them back into a much better condition to contribute to a district the way you would expect structures to contribute to a district. And just speaking today, when you look at that district as a whole, it has been somewhat compromised already by the light industrial and manufacturing that's in that area.
And it's been compromised by the fact that so many other structures have been demolished.
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the demolition of 609 South Dewey, 611 South Dewey.
Can we do this?
Okay.
Why don't we
I
just-
move to approve the demolition of 609 South Dewey.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, wait, we've got a motion and a second. Tannenbaum, Ainsworth, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam
Next.
Chairman, I move to approve the demolition of 611 South Dewey Avenue.
Tannenbaum, Ainsworth, Dickinchuck, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the demolition of 719 South Lee Avenue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I move to approve the demolition of 708 South Lee Avenue.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the demolition of 623 Southwest 6th Street.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Madam Chairman, I move to approve the demolition of 721 Southwest 6th Street.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And lastly, Madam Chairman, I move to approve the demolition of 614 Southwest 6th Street.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All the motions were Tannenbaum, Ainsworth. All were approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question regarding these on number 18 of the administrative approval report.
Oh.
Just wondering, which is 615 South Lee, is a church building in the same area?
What you have been seeing are ones that the survey said they were contributing to the district. They were coming to the committee. There's one or two on there that was an old church building, but if you saw it, it was nothing remarkable. That was not considered a contributing structure, so that's why it didn't come to you.
So 17 was also that way.
Correct.
Yep.
Because they're shown on here with red X's already.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We have a presentation by Mr. Jack McMahon. I am happy to know him, so I can't wait to hear what he has to say.
Betsy, can you preface why we invited him?
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm not absolutely certain. I had suggested that that everybody watch a video from a blind architect on the streets of San Francisco and
Yeah, but we'll try to do that for next time.
yeah, but I think that this is also talking about making things more accessible from all kinds of standpoints. Mr. McMahon has done some work at the Martin Nature Park to increase the experience for all people, not just people that can walk and can see and can hear, but all people. So I think he might have some fun things to talk to us about.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and committee members. My name is Jack McMahon. I am an accessibility management consultant with a company by the name of Crossing the Chasm. I also am the executive director of a nonprofit company here in Oklahoma City. We work with facility owners and managers. We work with the city to provide primarily program access as defined under Title II of the ADA in Section 504, the 73 Rehab Act, for people with disabilities to be able to access and enjoy primarily outdoor recreation activities and leisure activities such as museums.
So, and Jack, can I jump in and maybe you'll help us with this as well? We're in charge of designing or making sure the design for the downtown area is accessible to people. And so what I'm hoping we'll get is kind of open our minds and make sure that when we look at a design of a building and the landscape around it, and, that we think about it from a bunch of different accesses.
And hopefully I'll do that.
Okay.
Hopefully I'll do that. So what I would say is that all people want to go places and do things. They want to go to work. They want to go to play. They want to go in parks, museums. They want to watch the Thunder play ball. They want to go to church. They want to go to school. But when people with disabilities become involved, that becomes very complicated and difficult. And when professionals are trying to serve people with disabilities, like you are, it becomes also very difficult, very confusing. And sometimes as a result of that, access to programs, services, and activities in the buildings that you're looking at or at the properties that you're looking at becomes very difficult. And as a consequence, they're often misunderstood, overlooked, or possibly even ignored. And I know, because I'm one of those people that have tried to participate in those programs, and it is not me alone that experiences those challenges. My backstory, up until 13 years ago, I was an active business guy in Oklahoma City, moved to Oklahoma City with my wife, Susie, sitting behind me, 23 years ago, to take over a business here in the city. 12 years ago, I had a serious bicycle accident. As a result of that, I'm a quadriplegic. And so, like a lot of people with a disability, my recovery went through multiple stages: physical, emotional, financial. And along the way, I learned how difficult it was for me to engage challenges. And I began to look for opportunities to also engage in an additional passion in my life, which is being an outdoors person. So I was a bicycle rider, a mountain climber, a skier. I basically had come to a conclusion that that side of my life was over, that I was very glad I had some wonderful experiences, but my rationale was that I probably couldn't do those things. I couldn't go places to do those things, and I thought that that was okay. 7 years following my accident, I really had a relapse. I decided I had to get back outdoors. I had to find a way to get back to nature. And so I started investigating parks around Oklahoma State, found that it was very, very difficult to find a way to get off the beaten path, if you will. So I turned and instead went to Martin Park Nature Center, where I had visited frequently with my children as they grew up, and I realized my whole concept of accessibility was not what I thought it was, and I had significant difficulty getting into that park. And I'm going to show you not only what some of that difficulty was, what we did with that, and also how what we did, what we learned, might be applicable to what you do and what the city does in terms of opening programs, activities, and services for all people to help build a more inclusive society. So I'm not alone in this endeavor. Within the population of Oklahoma altogether, roughly 20% are people with defined disabilities. A defined disability is a mental or physical condition that interferes with one or more conditions of daily living, such as eating, standing, going to work, seeing, bathing. And there are a lot more people that have a temporary disability, but 1 out of 5 Americans today, 56 million Americans, have disabilities. Surprisingly, they're not always what you might imagine them to be. The ADA addresses disabilities primarily from the viewpoint the gold standard is a wheelchair. Frequently there's references to accommodating people that are blind. But when we look at things like cognitive disabilities or other forms of sensory disabilities, we realize how many people are truly overlooked or misunderstood from the notion of accessibility. Roughly 10% of those people are children with disabilities. More than 15% are in an aging population over the age of 65. And of course, that population is exploding today. So more now than ever, this concept of accessibility, both from a facility standpoint and a programmatic standpoint, is critical, and they go hand in hand. So this is what I was looking for. This is what my objective was. I wanted to get into nature. Frustrated, I did go to Martin Park because I felt very confident that I would be able to get into the park and enjoy the facilities at the park. This is what I was looking for. This trail happens to be a trail at a nature center or a nature area created by the Crotchet Mountain Foundation in Greenfield, New Hampshire. I discovered this on a YouTube video one morning. Believe it or not, this is actually a manufactured trail, although it looks like a very natural trail, looks like a natural surface trail. This was designed specifically to accommodate multi-purpose flow, but also it was a firm and stable surface that could accommodate wheelchairs and other forms of mobility devices. This is, in fact, what I found. On the right-hand side of your screen, there were significant root obstruction obstacles, obstacles. There were severe slopes on the left-hand side. The method of transition along the trail were steps, and all along the entire trail was a gravel surface, which makes it almost impossible to push a manual wheelchair. So I was looking at this strictly from the standpoint of my own interest. It was a very selfish view. It was one from a mobility access standpoint. But there were a couple of other lessons I also learned. Approximately 100 feet from the entrance of the park is an iconic bridge. It's called the Turtle Bridge, so named because if you go in the spring, summer, or fall, you lean over this railing, you look down, there are hundreds of turtles down below. There are huge carp that are swirling down here. People are laughing, giggling, talking, pointing. This is really a showstopper experience in the park. The problem is that, as you see with this young lady, or with me, my eye level from a wheelchair is right at the railing for that particular venue. Not only that, but the steel mesh that's alongside of that railing makes it impossible for me to look down. It becomes an absolutely solid barrier. So there's no way for me or this young lady to sit there and watch the turtles or fish, which is the experience that one would look to find at this particular venue. If I move along the trail, I find that most of the communication features, most of the ways that information is distributed, is the use of these on-trail placards, if you will. This is a single-post pedestal. It's impossible for me to get a chair underneath that. And furthermore, it's almost impossible for me to read that sign because I can't get close to it. It's off the trail. And of course, it would be impossible if I were blind. Moving along the trail, there are several wayside viewing stations, nature viewing stations. This is a wild bird viewing station. You certainly get the idea of how it works. You walk across the clearing, you put your head up against the post, you look through a port, and there are a number of bird feeders on the opposite side, and theoretically you look at a bird. If you're not sure what it is or what the story about that bird is, you look up at the billboard on your left, and you get some information about why that's important, how frequently they migrate, what might be significant about that specific species. The problem is that we don't go there because the wall is cool or the wall is accessible. We go there because we want to see the wildlife, or we want to learn lessons about that wildlife so we can get the complete picture, the complete story of that experience. But if we look at this young lady, she has a very, very difficult time, if not an impossible time, because her wheelchair won't let her make a frontal approach to that wall. And even if she put a side approach, which could be an accommodation under ADA, it would be impossible for her to crane her neck, try to lean down, and have any type of a comparable experience at that site. And my little friend Haley would be left out altogether. Haley's blind, she has multiple disabilities, but she can't have any type of a visual experience there. But Haley says something that's really cool about her desire to go to the park. I love nature, she says, because it's so feelable. So the way Haley is experiencing the world is significantly different than the way you or I might think about doing it. I made a determination that I wanted to try to help build a more accessible experience at Martin Park. I put together a nonprofit company called Wilderness Matters, and I began looking for experts in and around Oklahoma City that could help me design accessible improvements. The first thing, of course, I got information about was, Jack, you need to think about how to make the trail accessible. We need to talk to you about the trail surfaces. Most people were talking about widening the trail, placing pavement. I needed to consider routes, railings, ramps, and restrooms. Those were the primary consideration. But at the end of the day, it wasn't the ramps, railings, routes, or restrooms that I was concerned about. That's not the thing people remember. It's not the thing people rave about. It's going to the park for the nature, for the experience of being able to enjoy the tranquility, the view, the sound, the texture of the nature in the park. So the fact that I'm pointing out here is that most of the architects, the planners that I was working with, were really focusing on the facility, on the actual built structure or accommodating accessibility in that venue. And for the most part, that was being done and being done well. But the reality was the program was being completely overlooked. The reason you went there, what was included there, the activity that was conducted there was simply not being paid attention to or not being provided access. So the reality was the spirit of accessibility was, in a sense, being misunderstood or misapplied. Making it accessible requires three elements. Certainly, it always includes making the facility accessible. So there is always a need to talk about parking lots, restrooms, ramps, and railings. But there is more than that. There is the need, as defined under paragraph D of Title II, to make programs, activities, and services, when viewed in their entirety, accessible to people with disabilities. Similarly, under paragraph E, however, it says that information that's being distributed, communication techniques and devices, when they're applicable to the programs, also need to be made accessible. As accessible to people with disabilities as it is for people that are not disabled, so that communication is an essential part of Title II. So the spirit of Title II says that we're providing equal access to achieve an equal benefit for all visitors, and that it's to be made in situ, it is to be made in present, and it should, wherever possible, provide for independent facility access or independent program access. Title II also says making something accessible has to consider a variety of disabilities. So what we're talking about is mobility, which is usually thought of, sensory, which includes, of course, blind and deaf, but cognitive disabilities, which is rarely thought of or accommodated under most accessibility projects. What we did achieve was the trail that you see on the right. So I think we did achieve the objective that I was looking for. We used the existing footprint of the trail. We researched nationally to find the right type of product to be used to make a natural surface trail. We accommodated width, length, running slopes, side slopes to eliminate disabilities. And as a result of that, the traffic at Martin Park has increased almost tenfold as a result. We did spend approximately 2 years doing the research for this. I worked with municipal and state and federal parks around the country to find best practices. I networked with the National Center on Accessibility, the Smithsonian, the National Park Service to try to discern best practices, and we raised an abundance of money that will not only carry through this phase of the project, but also other phases in the project yet to come. When the trail didn't work because we were interfered with excessive slopes, side slopes, or we would destroy the nature of the park, we used additional features that not only would add the ability to navigate, but it would also add a dimension of experience. It would enhance the likelihood of a sense of excitement or learning. There are elevated viewing platforms in the park, for example, that we didn't want to disrupt, didn't want to disturb, and in the nature of Title II, which said accessibility when viewed in its entirety, we didn't need to disturb. We used boardwalks to achieve a sense of excitement and fun for anybody wanting to navigate the park. Going back to the Turtle Bridge, we designed a bump out so that you could actually pull off the trail if you were in a wheelchair or a walking cane. We had these steel pedestals designed and fabricated, and on the pedestal we mounted a interpretive exhibit. The carapace of the turtle on the right side is three-dimensional. It is made in exact detail of one of the turtles from the park so that you can actually feel the texture, you can see the size, you can experience the shape and feeling of 4 different turtle heads. There is Braille and there is raised text, so that there are multiple ways to engage this particular venue so that the whole experience is released to most of the visitors who are actually visiting the park. We not only did that, but we added a smartphone content application system so that when you travel through the park and want to travel independently, this GPS-triggered story will actually provide a narrative of what's occurring in a variety of stations along the park to provide a fulfilled communication obligation as defined under Title II. There is a formula that I developed for success. The formula is to really focus on the experience, why it is that a person is going to go to this venue, what they're going to do when they get there, or what they assume that they would be the best outcome of that particular venue. They would then interpret it using a variety of approaches, and then they would deliver the experience again to multiple disability awareness using multiple formats, and then integrating all of this so that we've got facility access, program access, and effective communication is kind of a holistic picture as required under Title II. We can look at a variety of elements throughout the city so that we can look at things like exhibits, we can look at indoor activities, we can look at outdoor activities, we can look at other places. This is the elephant exhibit at the zoo. We can look at architecture itself as being a defined program. It might be a spectacular reason why someone would appreciate a particular venue. It could be a combination of that. It could be size, shape, layout, angular approach. It could be the interior and exterior of buildings and programs that need to be considered. Why is programmatic access being overlooked? For a variety of reasons, but there are four important ones. Number one, it's complicated. If you looked at Martin Park Nature Center or many other facilities or experiences around the city, there are more than one state, federal acts or codes that are required at Martin Park. It is a Title II property, but since we were looking at trails, trails are no longer covered by ADA, so the next higher authority is ABA, but under ABA they have been replaced in 2013 by ODA, Outdoor Developed Area Act guidelines. So you see the complexity. Because we were using federal grant money, we pulled in the 73 Rehab Act compliance requirements so that 504 and 508, because we're using technology, were also triggered. So this gets really, really complicated. The second major reason is it's subjective. Title II simply says that an entity, a public entity, will make programs, activities, and services accessible to people with disabilities, but it doesn't define what a program is. It doesn't define readily usable. So it makes it somewhat subjective for the architect or planner to say what is readily achievable, what is readily usable, what is the program, and when have I achieved success. So that subjectivity creates lots of room for wiggle or misunderstanding. Who cares? When's the last time you went to a park or a movie theater or a mall and you saw 1 out of 5 citizens apparently disabled, using a walking cane, using a blind stick, using a wheelchair? The answer is not often. So the assumption at Martin Park by a large part of the public was people like that don't want to go there. They're not there. I don't see them there. They're not there in numbers of 1 out of 5, so they must not want to be here. The same thing's true with the museum, but the same thing's true everywhere. The reality is not the case. This is Logan, my friend. Logan wanted to go to the park, called me and asked me if he could be a volunteer. The way Logan navigates is his grandmother pushes him. You can see here how difficult that was for an experience for Logan. His grandmother was worn out at about 200 feet. Logan has not been back to the park because his original experience frightened his grandmother, who was his method of transportation. So the notion that people with disabilities don't want to be there is not always because they can't get along the sidewalk or they can't get into the building. It's because the reason they go to those places may not also be accommodated. They can't participate in the program, so that program access is equally important. There's also a lack of perspective. Often our architects, our designers, simply don't realize that being disabled requires a different way of experiencing life or a different way of experiencing a program. So it requires an active process of analysis of what that program is and then how to present that program in a way that makes it accessible. And that experience, that perspective, is one that I've dealt with by building a community of people with disabilities who become my guides. I don't know a disability other than one from a wheelchair. So I don't know what making something accessible for a person who can't see it or hear it or understand the transitions and learning part of it is. So I built this community of people that help me provide that guidelines. And that community may be missing in our design. So there are a couple of key concepts. Title II does require these facilities be made accessible because there is some objectivity. I would say to you that it's also because it's the right thing to do. It's a necessary part of considering effective design. It does necessitate analysis of one venue at a time. There's nothing here that states there is one way to do all things. It does require standard applied case by case. Costs are best managed during the design process. An evaluation is very difficult to retrofit in a cost-effective manner. And that by applying these standards, particularly in a universal design standard, we're achieving a much more inclusive society. We're bringing in those 600,000 Oklahomans that may not otherwise have an equal opportunity to participate. This is a bigger size because of that population. That number may be surprising to you. I hope it is. It's a bigger problem than most people recognize. Program access has often, if not more than often, been overlooked. And it's a common goal of mine, and I hope it is with yours, to apply it more effectively so that we can truly make this community a wonderful place to live.
Okay.
And that's my program.
Thanks very much. So just my question to you is what do you see as making our sidewalks better or not including in our sidewalks? Because that's kind of the space, the public space that we're dealing with.
Typically what you're doing is spending an awful lot of time not only making the sidewalk firm and stable and level, you're making it also attractive. So you're doing things along those sidewalks. You're adding gardens, you're adding fountains, you're adding statues or sculptures. The question is, how are you making those accessible for people who can't see them or possibly hear them or experience them by simply looking at them as they pass by? I'm working on a sidewalk project right now where the architect says, well, we make it possible for a person to get to the piece of sculpture. Well, getting to it and experiencing it are not always the same thing. Walking by it doesn't work for someone who can't see it. So the question is, does that piece of sculpture, does that garden need to be made more accessible so that maybe a raised bed or some type of a tactile representation of whatever that exhibit might be, make it so much more inclusive and so much more inviting for everybody. It's not just the person who can't see it who's going to be attracted to that tactile representation. It's going to be every single kid and every single person who walks by who's delighted by the fact that they can understand the scale, the color, the texture in a different way or different dimension. So does that answer the question about the sidewalk?
Probably. It's a pretty broad question.
You know, curb cuts are tough. Where they're applied, where they go, where does a curb cut empty into? How does that work from a PROAC, from a pedestrian right-of-way accessibility guideline or standard work? But more importantly, it's the other. You may have talked about facilities today that we're inviting people to come in and participate in some type of a service. So the adhesion, if you will, of the facility access, was it equally accessible, or did it comply with Title II from a programmatic standpoint?
What about stuff we put on the sidewalk? Like we have in our design, or the 180 design, we have, or is it 180? Yeah, Project 180 design, we have a sidewalk, and then we have an amenity zone. We've allowed things like we allowed specific trash cans, maybe some benches, some light fixtures. We did allow the red prime sign in that. Does that have any, like, bring up any concerns or anything
Yeah,
like that?
I mean, I'll go to the point just simply of things like benches. You know, so often a bench is positioned, and it's a wonderful, attractive bench, well-designed and well-situated. But the reality, does it accommodate a person to sit side by side with a guest who happens to be in a wheelchair? So the notion of accommodating companion seating is almost always overlooked. The question is, does the light post, the planter, the tree, whatever it is, pose any type of an obstruction? Usually it doesn't. I mean, I think we're doing a really good job of laying out sidewalks. If there's a bus stop involved, we don't always take that into consideration and how we're going to make that an accessible stop for a bus route or for accessible parking routes. So, I'd have to see it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, great.
Does that answer your
Yeah,
question?
that's helpful. Any other questions?
Signs along sidewalks, guidelines, venues, informational instructions, those are absolutely critical. If you can't get
Okay.
to them, can't get under them, or can't experience them, that's also a major problem.
Okay. Good. Any other questions?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I am going to... Yeah, of course. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Name like
And Chuck says he's wearing green, and we're all kind of questioning that. So, once again, I will mention that the City Council confirmed Danielle Terrio as Ike Akinwande's. We just can't get a break with these names. Terrio, Tannenbaum, Brunstetter. It is America. We are a melting pot right here on this horseshoe. Do we have any comments from the planning department staff?
Yeah, I passed out maps of the Arts Festival street closures because your April meeting will be the week of the Arts Festival. So if you're walking, you shouldn't have a problem. If you're driving, please take extra time.
Yeah, everybody's planning to be here for April, right?
Because Walker, right outside City Hall, will be closed.
Thursday, the 21st.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a great day.
Yeah.
Great day.
Yeah.
Afterward, you can go to something to eat.
Well, lots of us can walk in.
Just have to admire the passion, the courage, and the objectivity. Glad the awareness factor was there.
Oh,
I don't take anything for granted. So that was just,
It was
yeah.
mind-opening.
I think you should have ended it up with some type of webpage or some way in his presentation.
we could contact him and get.
How you
have
can
references.
support them in any way you can, either
But we'll send something
being
out.
a part of it or financially. I mean, that's.
Well,
20%. That's a lot. That's a big number.
so, and just thinking about the projects that are brought before us and looking at kind of it from several different standpoints, because design encompasses more than just the exterior skin of the building. So, anything else? Yeah, when she starts talking, you'll know how great she is. Uh-huh. And you did a great job with those motions. Thank you very much, Dick.
Tear that wall down for us.
Okay. And our next meeting is Thursday, April 21st. Our applications were due on Tuesday, so a lot or? Several. Okay. A brand new building. Okay, well, that'll be interesting. Oh. Oh. Yeah. Okay. And if everybody's ready, we're adjourned.